Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6:30 p.m. on April 23rd, 2024. Kisuk, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakitat-Nucleat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakitat-Nucleat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. And before I call the meeting to order, I'd just like to acknowledge that this Sunday, April 28th, is the Workers' Day of Mourning. It was created by Canadian Union of Public Employees, CUPE, who represent a good number of our employees here at the City of Fernie, more than 40 years ago to remember those who lost their lives on the job. And it should inspire us all to prevent further tragedies. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for approval of the agenda or any late items. Councillor Hamilton moves, Councillor McIsaac seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes from the previous meetings of council. And that the April 9th regular meeting, the minutes of the April 9th regular meeting and the April 16th, 2024 special meeting minutes be adopted. Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Audia Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor? That is also unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And as there's no one in the gallery, I'll turn to Ms. Rhodes, and no one online has indicated a desire to speak. So we will move right along to item 10, bylaws, beginning with 10.1. A report from our Director of Finance on the bylaw 2516 tax rate bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Good evening, Council. A few slides for me tonight to accompany the report in your agenda package. I will briefly describe the relationship between a homeowner's assessed value and their property tax. There's a slide to provide a little more clarity on what exactly property tax pays for, both in terms of municipal taxes and the tax we collect on behalf of other taxation authorities. Last week after the meeting, I had a question from a member of council about the timing of presentations from our community partners. So I prepared a slide on that so that all of council can hear that answer. And lastly, next steps for the property tax process, which, as a reminder to council, anyone watching, now that budget bylaw is adopted, this is the last step in the process. As per the community charter, we need to have a separate bylaw for property tax rates in order to then put those rates that are approved in the budget on property tax bills for distribution in mid-May. This slide and the next are repeat slides from previous budget presentations. This slide is direct from BC Assessment. What's important here is how a house's increase in assessed value when compared to the average in the city. If your house has gone up by 20%, but the average is 30%, then your taxes will likely decrease with respect to everyone else. And the opposite holds true if yours goes up by 40 and the average is 30. And again, this slide just puts that relationship in word form. And this slide has actual numbers from this year in Fernie. And so despite the average assessment increase in Fernie in 2024 of 3.56% in assessment value, council passed a 6.1% tax increase, and therefore the mill rate must go up so that the city can collect 6.1% despite the 3.56% increase in value. And it's worth noting that this is the first time the mill rate has increased in Fernie since before 2019. This slide is a half donut chart breaking out where the money goes from the average home in Fernie. It's way better than a pie chart. But for an average residential property in Fernie, which is valued at $907,000, their tax bill for this year will be approximately $5,138. Just over half of that, 51%, the city collects on behalf of other taxation authorities, such as the regional district, the provincial school program, regional hospital, and 2 other smaller taxation authorities, BC Assessment and the Municipal Finance Authority. I've also split out the cost of RCMP there at the top, which is 6% of a typical property tax bill. And then the orange section on the right is where the rest of your municipal taxes go, split between reserves, fire and bylaw, general government, which includes administration and council, public works, parks, facilities, playgrounds, and so on. Lastly, or not lastly, sorry, this slide details the other individual taxation authorities. You can see the 6.1% for the city here, resulting from the budget process from the last few months. Of note is the hospital, which has close to a 23% increase this year. RDEC only increased 3.4%. Worth noting that in 2023, they increased 10%. And school also up around 6% in 2024. And as I said earlier, a member of council asked about the timing of community group presentations this year. And I just wanted to share that answer with all of council. When I started at the city doing the budget process for the 2022 budget, the community partner groups, which are the museum, library, art station, senior center, and the chamber, would come in usually February or March and give their update for the year as well as their budget for the year. And during those presentations, there were several comments from council regarding the usefulness or awkwardness of the timing of these presentations, given we were always nearing completion of our own budget cycle. And I always agreed with those comments and personally questioned the use of discussing backward-looking prior year results during our forward-looking budget process. So earlier this year, staff had a meeting with the community groups to discuss a change in timing as to when they come and present to council. And we landed on later in the fall being the most useful, both in terms of their internal timing with their year-end process and in terms of our own budget timing. We'll have that information to revisit during next year's budget cycle. So that council can have the best and most timely information possible. And it's, again, I'll note that this doesn't change the deliverables in the agreements with the community partners, as the agreements only reference their submitted report and not presentations. And my original intent was to make this change for this past budget cycle, but the timing of my own leave last fall very much affected facilitating this change. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions on the report or the process. And then the next step after tonight would be adoption on May 14th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Questions from council? Seeing none, I'll ask Mr. McConnell to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that tax rates bylaw number 2516, 2024 be given first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? I just want to say, I wanted to thank again our finance group and all of staff for pulling this budget together. And while I certainly appreciated Councillor McIsaac's comments at our last meeting, I do think this budget, while still underfunding our reserves to some degree, is putting money in reserves and strikes a nice balance for our residents between where they are and where they've been in terms of runaway inflation. And now that is slowing down, and it gives folks, I think, an opportunity to catch up. So I wanted to say that. And I want to say thank you, as always, to council for the discussions over the budget period. It's always, these are not easy conversations, but everybody deported themselves well. and clearly, and so we're grateful for your input. So with that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And those opposed? And Councillor Shoesmith is either giving us the victory sign or something much worse.
Just to be clear, I had it as Shoesmith, Audia Kelly, and Ramadas councillors opposed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Burdett. And we move on to item 10.2, report from our manager of planning.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Lennox and I were having a discussion this afternoon. It's a historic day for us that this is quite possibly our last R1B rezoning before the adoption of the residential small scale zone. I do want to note to council that there may have been some questions as to why we're bringing this forward now when the other zone is impending. The guidebook from the province relating to residential small scale zoning or small scale multi-unit housing spoke to this actually, and it just noted that, or what they suggested was that we should just have a discussion with those potential applicants to see what route they wanted to go, and that's what we did in this case. We spoke to the applicant and they chose to move forward, and the reason for that was to just give them a little bit more time to get a building permit application in relating to the secondary dwelling unit that they want to build. So bylaw 2511 for 1362 8th Avenue, it's to rezone from R1 to R1B. So this is currently zoned R1. As you can see on the map, it is in a neighborhood with a great variety of residential zones. It also shares a lane with the highway commercial zone. The orange property there is an RMH property, which is manufactured home zoning. The different shades of brown are R4, R1B, and R2 duplex, and then the yellow is the R1 zone. Again, they are asking for this zoning in order to build a detached secondary suite in the backyard. This is consistent with the OCP and the affordable housing strategy. And because it's consistent with the OCP, of course, it will not require a public hearing. And as a result of that, our recommendation tonight is that council approve the application and that the bylaw be given first, second, and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. Questions for Mr. Similini? Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just curious, Manager Similini, like if someone say changed their mind down the road, can they still come back? Like if we passed this one and then they're like, oh, you know what, maybe we want to do something a little different, they could still come back, right? Or no?
Just to clarify, if you're speaking to adopting this property specifically or in general?
In general.
Is not necessary anymore.
Yeah, so once the small scale multi-unit housing zone is adopted, if we move forward in the manner that we spoke about at Committee of the Whole, where sort of that blanket zoning, then they would have the option to do whatever they want anyway, so they wouldn't need to come back to us for any changes.
Perfect. So people previously that we might have rezoned would have the options.
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome.
So yeah, any rezoning that we've done in the past for these R1Bs or R1SLs, those types of things wouldn't be necessary anymore because those options are already in the blanket zoning.
Other questions from council? Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. First off, I want to comment on your tie. It's very nice.
I heard council talking some trash about the Maple Leafs when I walked in, and I wasn't sure if they saw my tie first. But I can tell you the story as to why I'm a Leafs fan one day.
Secondly, I just want to say that, I've been here since 2018. We have seen so many of these proposals come in front of us. And I think there was only 1 in 6 years that we turned down. And it's kind of it's a strange day, isn't it? That this will be the last one. So I'm all in favor of density, and I'm looking forward to supporting this proposal.
Any other comments? Just one question I think I know the answer to. Given that it shares the laneway with the highway commercial, that's cleared by the city, that commercial laneway?
Your worship, I believe that commercial laneways are cleared. That specific one, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Director Hausler can confirm, but he is maybe looking right now.
They typically are, aren't they?
They typically are. If it wasn't, it would be up to the property owners if they want rear yard access in the wintertime to clear the lane.
Okay, thank you. And the only other comment I have is that given it may be the last one, you've showed remarkable composure and not tearing up. And I can't tell from this distance whether Director Lennox is welled up or not, but well done.
I am a crier, and they will be tears of joy, I believe, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Simulini. With that, I will ask Mr. McConnell to read the two motions.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first recommendation is that council approve the application to amend zoning bylaw number 1750 by rezoning 1362 8th Avenue from R1 single family residential to R1B single detached plus residential.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And the second recommendation is that zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 274, bylaw number 2511, 2024 be given first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audia Kelly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Again, that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simulini.
Thank you, Worship. And Councillor Nixon, you can borrow my tie anytime you want.
This moves us along to item 10.3, report from our acting manager of engineering, Mr. Baird.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present to you the new subdivision development servicing bylaw 2514, some of the changes that were made and how it differs from our current subdivision development servicing bylaw, as well as the engagement process we went through in 2023 to get to where we are today. So our existing bylaw, 1727, currently its purpose regulates the subdivision and development of land, including the administrative and technical standards for initiating and completing developments within city limits. It was originally adopted by council in 1998, and that bylaw itself includes 9 sections and 15 schedules. This update or the new bylaw, it maintains that same goal of regulating subdivision and development with the city, but the update itself intends to simplify the document that we have for ease of interpretation and to improve the development process. It includes guidelines and standards specifically applicable to our local context, incorporates updated plans and policies within the city, such as the Active Transportation Master Plan, OCP, and zoning bylaws. And a big one, it adopts the Master Municipal Construction Documents Association design guidelines and contract documents for engineering and construction standards, MMCD. I'm sure many of you have heard of it before, but I can go through a little bit about it and what it is. It's an organization that's supported by BC municipalities. It includes construction contract documents, specifications, engineering design guidelines to support a standard approach to infrastructure development in the province. These documents are well received by many other BC municipalities and developers in areas that are similar in size and characteristics to Fernie. Many other communities have also incorporated these standards and guidelines within their own subdivision bylaws, such as Elkford, Squamish, and Pemberton are a few. The city itself incorporates the MMCD documents and design guidelines within their own capital programs and have been doing so for many years. So, one of the big advantages of this new bylaws that we're, bringing consistency between the development community and what the city has currently been doing for a while. So what have we done? We have, as I mentioned, the old bylaw had 15 schedules. We've reduced that down to 5. One of the big changes is the adoption of the MMCD design guidelines. That's now within the design criteria of Schedule B, previously in bylaw 1727. That was schedules B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Another one being the approved products list, which we didn't have before, and that allows or gives users an indication of what the city wants to use for various materials to build their development out. And those were sort of buried within the old design criteria or schedules B, C, D, E, F, and H, whereas now it's in one place. So as the city adapts and chooses new products, it's an easy review and replace sort of situation if they wanted to. Other changes that were completed were adopting and simplifying roadway classification with less typical cross sections in the current bylaw and accommodating active modes based on our active transportation master plan. Clarity around incorporation of water and sanitary utility modeling for larger subdivisions. Inspection requirements are more clearly defined in Schedule D, previously Schedule J, and I can get into what those are in a moment. Maintenance periods were simplified quite a bit in our current bylaw. Depending on the type of utility being installed or piece of infrastructure being built by a developer, the maintenance periods could be anywhere from 1 year to 3 years. Now it's simplified over 1 year for all infrastructure. On the flip side of that coin, as I mentioned, the inspection requirements are now more stringent. So with that level of comfort that we would be getting on increased inspection, the maintenance periods would be reducing. Stormwater management, lastly, the one I want to talk about has been modernized. The current bylaw and an older way of looking at things with stormwater management was just dealing with maintaining flows of your area. Now, the industry is moving more towards looking at, protection and enhancement of aquatic habitat, surface water supply, groundwater sources, treatment, as well as just handling storm flows. And so that's been incorporated into the new bylaw through the MMCD design guidelines. And then another one, hillside standards. The MMCD design guidelines incorporate a piece regarding hillside standards, noting that a lot of development, especially in Fernie, for example, moving forward is in that more challenging terrain. So the goal of that component of this bylaw would be, accommodating that while minimizing, environmental impacts and disturbance to natural slopes and that sort of thing. And I can talk a little bit about that more that came up in our engagement process, which started on April 24th of 2023 last year, where we held a couple sessions in this room, actually, with staff, followed by a public and development community session. Both of these sessions were meant to introduce the new bylaw and the engagement process, where we discussed with stakeholders, how they would best like to be engaged, and some of the adjustments that were being made. One particular item that came out from the development community at that April 24th session was that the plan at the time was to have a public or website available and survey for only a couple weeks. It was April 25th to May 6th. They felt that they needed more time to review the document itself to provide more valid feedback. So we, as a group, decided to extend that to May 22nd. And so from there, the Let's Talk page was launched, where a draft bylaw was available for the development community and public to review, as well as an online survey for them to provide comments. In addition to that, 2 in-person meetings were held with one developer to review the bylaw in its entirety. discussed specific items that they felt needed to be revised. Once all that information was compiled.
Sorry, Mr.
Oh,
Baird.
yep.
Councilor McIsaac?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to ask a question about that because I read that in the report, but didn't see it as part of the formal engagement process here. And that was the additional meetings with a specific developer. I'm just curious, Your Worship, if was that opportunity made available to all developers, or is this something that just was available for one?
Mr. Baird?
I can't recall exactly the circumstance that particular developer did reach out, but it was at the time, that was the only one that specifically asked for that one.
Ms. Boranowski?
Director Heisler, you might want to confirm this. My understanding is, though, that invitations for direct meetings were sent to all participants at the open house as well. It's just that only one developer took us up on those additional meetings. But invitations were distributed to the development community, the same who were invited to the open house.
Thank you very much.
And just contextually, that those additional meetings with that developer, it wasn't just an individual. There was a team of people there in terms of the exchange of information. There was a varied group of expertise present.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you. Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just wanted to confirm the date here, July 24th, 2024 or 2023. Is that a typo? Like the right bottommost block?
You are 100% correct. That is a typo. July 24th, 2023, the final draft was made available.
Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you. Where was I? June 20th, 2023. We had a public workshop with the development community again, and this was a much more in-depth exercise where we went through the bylaw, section by section, talked about various components that different stakeholders thought needed clarity or other things like that. Following, one of the big things that came out of that session was that the plan at the time was to complete that session, finish the bylaw, and it would be presented to council. And that group at that time had requested, can we have one more final look at it? And that's where we made that final draft available on July 24th, 2023, and presented that to the group and requested comments back by August 18th. So from there, what did we hear? As I said, the initial session was attended by 10 developer community stakeholders. The June 20th workshop, a little bit less at 5. That's overall general acceptance and agreeance with the adoption of the MMCD standards. And then there were some other items that were not necessarily within the scope of the bylaw update, but definitely discussed, and some valuable information taken out of that of what would be next steps for staff to amend this bylaw in the future, such as updating the IDF curve. As I mentioned about it earlier, the hillside development standards was a big one. A lot of the development areas left within the city are working their way up the hills, which is much more challenging to develop on. And so, some relaxation to the standards was, requested by the development community. And that's where we felt the MMCD guidelines currently very open-ended. It allows for relaxation of the design guidelines themselves with, appropriate justification through other known like engineering documents, the Transportation Association of Canada, for example.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just for clarification, when you say relaxing the design guidelines, is that like an aesthetic design guideline, or is that more like we're talking structural and potential safety implications?
Thank you for that. For the question, safety implications, relaxation, absolutely not. a good example would be when you're, developing a land on a steep hillside, the typical right-of-way width is 20 meters. But if you can imagine that on a really steep side slope, that takes up a lot of area and requires a big fill slope or a massive wall. So reducing that right-of-way width to a reasonable standard limits the environmental impact of the overall footprint of that road. That would be like one example. Changing curve radiuses, for example, on a switchback could be reduced because on that road in particular, you'd have a lower design speed that the city would understand because that is a challenging mountainous road, for example. Those are a few examples. Does that answer the question?
Help me understand that a little bit, Mr. Baird. Is that something that would happen in the overall review of the preliminary layout of the development, or would those changes be managed by variance to the bylaw? Like, how would those actually be created for a development?
I guess in the road design one, for example, we have our standard cross section, which if that wanted to be changed, that would come under a variance.
Oh.
Within the design guidelines, we've also got maximum road grades based on that. The classification of road that you're in. The hillside standards allows for a change in that road grade. And so that could be done in this instance, I would expect, without a variance needed to the bylaw. And so that's where that, and then where that would happen with the process would be, through the design review and the developer's engineer, through meetings with the city engineer.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm just curious, we're going to be deferring to the MMCD guidelines quite a bit. And I'm just curious, how often do they change? Is it like the electrical code where they go, okay, the last change is 2021, so this is the year that we change the entire guidelines, or is it, how often does it happen? Just curious.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. The current edition of the MMCD design guidelines is 2022. The previous one before that was 2014. However, as it's written in this bylaw right now, it's hard coded as the 2022 edition. So if it were to change in the future, that would be something that would have to come back to council to decide if they wanted to adopt the next version, which based on the timeline, maybe 10 years.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I wonder if that's worthy of a greater question or discussion in Worship about whether or not we want to set up the process to evolve along with the information, or fix ourselves to a specific anchor and then wait there until changes later. I'm just wondering hearing about the potential pros and cons of one or the other.
Can you speak to that, Mr. Baird?
Absolutely. Thank you. This actually came up through our process near the end where we had a bit of a legal review, and the MMCD documents themselves, they're not a public entity. They're, their own organization. So for a public community such as the city adopting or saying that this group that's not public updating their standards without going to the public for them to adopt it wouldn't be something that we could do.
Well, and given that they're a public or not a public body, that we'd want to be comfortable updating the entire bylaw to the new standard before we did it. It's based on what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. Councillor Ramirez, and then Councillor Hamilton, and then.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to unpack the engagement process with the developers community there. Looking at those numbers, about 4 people really filled up the survey. Was that a surprising number? Did you expect more to actually engage with this?
Yeah, we had, like I said, there was 10 stakeholders at the initial meeting, and that was 10 groups that were there. I'm not sure, more people from one company might have just registered on the list as more than one. So I would have thought more would have responded, but we got 4.
Mhm. And I think, and just this is a blanket statement and certainly not directed at you, Mr. Baird, we need to be cautious about diminishing a small number because that's 4 people who cared enough to participate, and we don't want to dishonor that effort because it will inform the outcome ultimately. And I think let's just generally be careful with how we look at those numbers. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify with staff that the way that I read the section of Schedule A subsection 1.2 sub D, excuse me, it does say Design Guidelines Manual 2022, but then in the next paragraph, the provisions of this bylaw are to be applied in conjunction with the Master Municipal Design Guidelines Manual most current edition, which otherwise applies to all works and services. So I'd made a note about which edition, like, does this just automatically renew or is it hard coded to a specific one? Because those 2 paragraphs seem to not work together.
Yeah, again, to Councillor Hamilton, the intent is that it would be hard coded.
Councillor Audia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship, and not intended as a criticism of anyone. There's quite a list of what I'm taking to be things that aren't incorporated currently that we're looking at. And I'm curious as to the timeline, in particular, since we just talked about steep slope and its importance. So I'm kind of curious as to beyond our capacity to address, and we intend to outline work plans to incorporate these items in the future. Those are a lot of items that look like pretty serious items. If we're currently working, I'm not going to articulate this well, I don't think. If we're currently working with the MMCD 2022, did I understand that properly? Are we better off to take a little more time and try to incorporate some of the things from this list that might be really super important? Like, are we moving forward maybe prematurely, although I know 1998 was a long time ago? Maybe, sorry, Mr. Baird, but do you know where I'm going with that?
I believe so. I'll try my best to answer it there. And yes, there is an extensive list of next steps, and we wouldn't want something like 100% completeness to get in the way of progress, I guess. Our current bylaw that we have doesn't incorporate many of those things, hillside standards being a big one for sure. And there's, again, I'll go back to hillside standards. That would take an engagement process, just as in depth as what we've gone through for this one. And so wanting to, take a step in the right direction. But if we were to wait for all of those items to be updated, to update this one, we'd probably be in a similar situation with the way the world changes and different things, and then we'd never progress. And so that's one of the goals here.
Yeah, and as you say, and having read the bylaw, the draft bylaw, it is open-ended, and there is opportunity to vary from the bylaw through variance and design, design engineering that we're satisfied with. That doesn't preclude us from continuing to refine the steep slope hillside development standards as we move forward. The perfection being the enemy of the good, right? We'll have a working bylaw that we can operate under and the city can advance under, with the understanding that we're going to improve aspects of it as we move it forward. Fair?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Shoesmith, please.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Yeah, just back a step. Although four people is a ridiculously small number of people to canvass in a survey, it should be noted that the total pool of people involved here, I mean, we're not talking 30 people. It's a couple handfuls of people are going to be affected directly and will be involved in this.
Mhm.
Was that a question?
No, observation. Go ahead. Oh, Councilor Hamilton, you have a question?
I do have a question, but I think it's best wait till the end of the presentation.
Okay. I'll put you first on the list at the end.
Jumping back into it, I don't actually have a slide for it, but the last piece that I just wanted to bring up to discuss was the development community was very curious through the engagement process of how will enacting this happen, and will it become law, and all of a sudden every development has to follow it. And so I just wanted to get that out there, that the plan was, if first, second, and third readings are adopted by or go through by council tonight, the plan would be to come back again at the end of May for fourth reading. And then we've got the written enactment date in there as September 1st, with the idea being that if any developer has a PLA in or an existing subdivision servicing agreement already in before that enactment date, the existing bylaw that we currently have would be the one that governed the continuation of their project moving forward. Yeah, that was just one other thing I wanted to, at least that's the plan that staff's recommending moving forward. And that was all of the presentation I had. The only other thing was the options, which I can fumble through sharing my screen again. Hey. All the way to the end.
Yeah, why do you do that? I'll get Councilor Hamilton to ask this question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not being a professional planner or engineer or developer, the one question that I had going through the back of my mind is, does this, or does Bill 44 and this subdivision servicing bylaw have any impact on each other?
From a servicing perspective, the density we would expect would be increasing within the city, obviously, or have the ability to, as people want to increase the density within their current lots. But this bylaw itself is, building the infrastructure of your new development to handle the density that it is expecting. So by this bylaw referencing the zoning bylaw, sort of covers that off. One of the other important pieces I would say that this bylaw has a little bit more strength in than our current one is the requirement of completing water and sewer models to understand not only the capacity of the development that's being built, but what the impact that development has on the downstream infrastructure in a sewer sense, and how that infrastructure would be affected. Is it over capacity or under capacity and that sort of thing? The current bylaw that we have certainly doesn't take Bill 44 into consideration. And this one, though not specifically, does have those aspects of it that would allow for it. And any other bits on that, I would talk to the planning.
Further?
So, yeah, so I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I guess my question, or maybe my concern looking to the future is, you mentioned the expected density of a development, but if they're expecting a single family dwelling on each property, but the subsequent purchasers of that land can go ahead and build three up to four, depending on the size of the lot, would it not be prudent for us to be building that capacity into our models in case? And I guess requiring that in the initial infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is it's captured in the design guidelines, in that if you're building a development, single family residential, based on the zoning for that area, single family residential soon will be more than that. And so you have to design that development to handle the number of expected residents, and that's what your water demands and sewer demands are based off of. So by referencing our zoning bylaw and the zoning density that will be what it is in the next month or so, it already looks at that. Does that answer your question?
And there is, and sorry, Councilor McCausey, but it is, servicing is addressed. I think in that circumstance, there are variations in the draft bylaw for whether it's strata, whether it's, 4 dwelling units in on a single footprint. There are some variations in the bylaw to deal with that as I look at it.
Yes, if you're developing a strata development or, a multifamily development, you're designing your demands based on the units and the projected population within those units. So by looking at your population projections, that's what you're building off of. So 100 people in one apartment versus 10 people on 2 lots or something, for example. The demands would be different.
Yeah. Councilor McCausey.
Thank you, Worship. Sort of related to this, but also hearkening back to Councillor Kelly's question. Just wondering, for particular sections which are yet to be updated by the time this bylaw starts to impact development, what will be guiding those particular areas until they're added? So, if the new sewer and water modeling is not complete by the time this starts to affect development, what will be guiding those aspects for developers in the design process? It will be what's currently in place, or is there something else?
I'll try and paraphrase, see if I can ask your question back. Like you're asking if a development were to go forward, say now, and be under bylaw 1727, what would govern looking at the modeling for those ones?
If I may, I think what he's asking is if 2514 is in place and the hillside construction work is not yet complete, what guides both the city and the developer in putting that infrastructure in place?
For say in your example, hillside development, it would be this bylaw to 2514, which does have a component of hillside development standards in it that you would look to. So there would be, that preparation of design drawings by the developer's engineer that would look to some of those other guiding documents like TAC for determining roadway design and things like that.
Okay. Sorry, so the MMCD design guidelines will apply in this bylaw if a builder, once this is approved, because we've acknowledged that steep slope hillside development standards will be under review. Those will still, the MMCD accepted guidance will still apply, and the builder developer will have to advance by variance if he wants to change from that.
It would depend on the degree of change. If it's outside of what the design guidelines currently show, then yes, they would likely need a variance. But if it's within what the design guidelines recommend, then no.
Okay. And then I guess that sort of leads to the question, then at what point will we be satisfied that we have appropriately, because we keep talking about this one, that we've appropriately developed the hillside development guidelines, and as such, they're now enshrined in the bylaw? And would that in turn have to come back to council?
Yeah, if we were to develop a full guideline with revised cross sections and a lot more detailed design criteria for hillside standards, I would suspect that would be in addition to this or an amendment in the future.
Mr. Baranowski.
Thank you, Worship. If I may, the Squamish, BC is a good example of this. They generally follow MMCD design requirements, guidelines that they have adopted as their requirements. But then because they are in a very unique location with granite and steep slopes, they've also developed or adopted cross sections and design standards that have been developed to meet their unique challenges. And so they have this sort of baseline standard and then additional cross sections and designs that are then adopted and supersede the MMCD standards as a new baseline for their community.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I think that's the missing key. So I was a bit concerned after Councillor Audie Kelly's question, but I think what I'm hearing now is contrary to what I was thinking before. With this bylaw in place in MMCD, all the potential development and design issues and so on are all would fall under that umbrella. If we decide later that we want additional design guidelines brought in and so on, then those will be incorporated in the bylaw and brought back. But meanwhile, development is not going to be stymied. They're going to be able to continue to move forward under the MMCD guidelines and this particular bylaw.
And to my question earlier, and vary from this bylaw
And-
where
right.
appropriate and deemed safe and you know, a good outcome for the community.
Using the normal variance
Yeah, using
process.
the
Yeah.
normal
Yeah,
variance
okay.
process.
Thank you.
Is that is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. In light of what CAO said and what we've just been discussing, could you give us an idea of the time frame that it would take to develop like the policy around let's keep sticking with the steep slope? You know, because we are moving forward, I'm imagining that we've left these things out because they're going to take a long time.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the level of engagement would likely change how long you'd want it done or not. I mean, you'd need some form of engagement, and the development community through this process, you know, was very felt that was a very important thing. So and things like that take time. So, you know, I'd expect you'd want to put a decent amount of time on it. It's hard to actually put a number to it without, knowing the level of engagement that we would want.
Fair enough. Councillor Audie Kelly.
So just with you saying that, Mr. Baird, leads me to believe that you have already been given some feedback on that particular item and others. So is it just a matter of collecting some more feedback or new feedback, or, you know, 6 months from now, or like, was there not enough feedback provided that satisfied, sorry, not being a professional, satisfied what we need for the bylaw now?
Mr. Baranowski, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Developing new engineered standard cross sections is a project unto itself, fully out of scope of the subdivision servicing bylaw development project and consultation that we undertook. There was not budget nor intended to be budget for us to develop our own custom cross sections. Large municipalities, as in the city of Calgary, Abbotsford, Vancouver, significantly larger, have an engineering team where they're able to look at new developments in master planned areas and develop those cross sections and roll them in, and it does become efficient and effective. But we simply don't have that horsepower. So if we are finding that the variances continue to come in, and this is a challenge for us to assess against the MMCD designs, we could initiate or request support from council to initiate a process to either A, adapt and adopt the designs that we are accepting as varied designs, or to initiate a consultation and develop our own custom designs. But it's a discrete project requiring dedicated time and attention and an engineer to apply to it.
Well, and the report does actually speak to work plans being developed to address these things, right? Like that, and I think that's important to that if we see these already as, you know, there's a list of 10 of them. If we see them already as I won't use the word weaknesses, but areas to be addressed post adoption of the bylaw, then it'd be good to understand what that looks like, what resources are required, you know, how long that process would take. And I get this one in particular will likely take a lot of input from the people who are actually doing that work on the ground and want, you know, their developments to advance in this complex, hilly environment.
I agree.
Thank you. Councilor Ramanathan.
Thanks, Your Worship. I know there has been only 4 responses, and one developer had some pretty strong opinions about the way the process went. So not trying to overweight that one particular comment versus everyone else, but that is the input we have, at least I have seen through this report. Could I suggest something, Your Worship, if you wouldn't mind? Instead of maybe voting on the bylaw right away, could we actually do one more exercise with the developer community, with the acknowledgement that, the hillside work and all the 10 other pending items will take more time, but still be able to cross the I's and dot the T's. I always forget what the right framing is. But anyway, just do that due diligence homework before this comes back to a vote.
Well, that would be a question for council as a whole, understanding that will add cost to the development of this bylaw as part of the process. So we need to understand that first. And the willingness and for the development community to continue participating in that conversation in a manner that doesn't delay this, unnecessarily down, into the future. It has been, was it 1998?
The existing bylaw was 1998.
And
this process of bylaw update started, I believe, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, almost 10 years ago. Like that, it feels like a long time. Further?
Agree, Your Worship. I support this one, to be clear. And some of the things that the manager spoke about in terms of streamlining the process, absolutely 100% on board with it. It's just that the feedback that we have got, unfortunately, we don't have too many data points to kind of say one way or the other. There's one person who's spoken, and we cannot be overweighting that one person's voice, but that's what we have. So maybe I should ask this, maybe what will it take for us to actually allay some of their fears with respect to this bylaw? Like, would it take enormous amount of time and resources from staff?
Your Worship and Council, I think that's a question for them, if I'm being honest, because we had done public consultation and then direct meetings, addressed over 120 unique comments and questions line by line through the subdivision servicing bylaw with a team, including planners and engineers and the owner. And then it took months to refer that throughout staff internally to come to decision points. And of course, we made decision points based on that internal referral and our expertise. And not all of those met the hopes of the individual that I believe you're referring to, but I don't know what's going to allay their concerns or address it, short of providing them the opportunity to redevelop that bylaw and then have that as a consideration come in, and for us to consider what is and is not acceptable. My recommended approach in staffs is to advance to a standard so that we might join a community of practice who are working with this standard and identifying ways to develop with it, vary it as we need, and manage it as we move forward in responding to changes in provincial legislation. I fully admit that doesn't meet the needs of someone who owns land that's highly constrained and highly unique and needs specialized cross sections and specialized servicing. But I also have a perspective that I'm not sure as staff we would be recommending to council that the taxpayers should be funding that design of those standards for inclusion in our bylaw unless we have fully master planned and endorsed community development plans for those lands that we're then building off of. And so with those gaps in place, I think it would fall realistically to the developer to develop those cross sections and bring them in to standards that we were able to accept and might consider including if at that point we have a master infrastructure strategy and a carrying capacity, a master neighborhood plan or local area plan that we were going to then roll in as part of our subdivision servicing or subdivision development bylaw over the long term. That's a long, rambly answer for me to say, I'm really not sure. And I think that's a question you would have to pose to the individual who is the landowner and developer.
Well, and if I may, the way this is drafted, there is nothing that stops a developer from advancing a project. And should that developer want to vary from this bylaw, there is a process that allows said developer to come before council and say, or through staff to say, we want to vary the cross section for these reasons. Here's the full engineering of our proposal. What do you think? And to your point, at some point, we may choose to adopt that as a, don't call it, maybe one of the standards available to local development community.
And your worship, that's how it has to happen presently. The big difference is currently developers are building to a standard that is extremely dissonant to the standard that we adhere to with our infrastructure development and our infrastructure replacement, because we follow this standard in the infrastructure the municipality builds out itself.
Yeah, and I prefer to use Mr. Baird's wording about the current bylaw is open-ended to allow for relaxation of the standards for hillside development. I'd prefer that to be open-ended versus the entire process of arriving at a bylaw to be open-ended, because that has no horizon in my mind. That could go on for a long time and have that conversation back and forth. I guess that doesn't make me comfortable. MMCD standards are used around the province. People rely on them in umpteen communities. There's option to vary from that with the right engineering and conversation, etc. Like that makes me more comfortable than leaving the entire bylaw open. Sorry, that's a bit of a ramble, but Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor McIsaac.
Well, I think you may have saved me a bit of rambling there. I'm kind of challenged with this notion of we only got 4 responses. So that's not enough data points, yet we are still willing to hold up the entire process because we got 1 data point that is not in agreement with it. As staff have said, this process, the bylaw is 30 years old. Sorry, my math's not very good on my feet here. And this bylaw has been in update for 10 years. Like there's been plenty of time for this feedback. There's been plenty of comments made publicly and to council about how long everything is taking in the development world and how slow council is to develop anything and move development forward. And yet here we are ready to provide something to speed it up. And we're then getting asked to slow it down again. So, the public statements seem to be a little bit incongruent. So for that reason, like, as we've discussed, there is an ability to vary. There are plenty of opportunities if an individual or a development corporation developing a piece of land come up to a situation that just requires a variance, that opportunity exists.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. Both of you have already successfully put a couple coats of paint on that wall. So I've tried not to be too redundant. I guess the last point I want to make was I differ a little bit in the language that was used earlier, that this email is the information that we have, and I would argue that actually the entire engagement process is the information that we have. Lots of developers have provided feedback, and while the numbers are small, it's because we don't have 500 developers here. We only have, as Councillor Shoesmith noted earlier, this is probably representative of that particular group. And as I just wanted to make a quick comment about timing. This is much longer ago than that. Mr. Lennox probably could correct me on this, but I'm pretty confident if I look back at my agendas in 2009 and 10, there were conversations then about changing the subdivision and servicing bylaw. So this has been a long time coming, and I think we need to get there.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. It's 26 years. 26. What happened to my laptop? My notes. Yeah, I thank you, Worship. I really like the approach of following the MMCD guidelines. It's a not-for-profit group. It's many municipalities are using it. And as we can see, things just get more and more complicated as we are building and taking into account climate change, and it's harder to do these things. And I think having that body there and having those references there, it means that we're not reinventing the wheel every time we turn around. So I'm all in favor of going for this new bylaw.
Thank you. I have, and I apologize, Mr. Barrett, because we've gone around some big philosophical issues. I have just some technical questions about the bylaw itself, if I may. Where in our community would rural cross sections be applicable?
Currently, I believe the only rurally zoned area is out in Riverside. Burma Road as well? Thank you, Director Lennox. And Ridgemont. Beyond Ridgemont. Oh,
okay. Give Mr. Lennox more time, he'll come up with another one.
Better.
And I had a question about water and sanitary modeling. So we maintain our own, it sounds like from the report, we maintain our own water and sanitary modeling as a city.
Correct.
And developers are required to do their own water and sanitary modeling?
Right now, the bylaw doesn't have as much guidance or clarity on how that works. For larger developments, they provide their development demands, and then those get plugged into the model that the city runs or maintains.
And do they don't have access to that model?
Correct, they do not. That was something that actually came up in the engagement sessions as well, of developers saying we would like access to that model. And that was ultimately decided maybe a bit risky in that, we can give someone the model for them to use, which, is a very expensive piece of knowledge that the city develops. But once it goes into the hands of someone else and then they start making changes to it, they can make a change that hasn't been updated in the city, or the city can get another development that goes in that now they're relying on information that's perhaps old. So we felt it safer for the city and for developers to rely on the city holding that base and updating it as things needed to be updated, and providing, a developer might want to try multiple scenarios within their own development. So we could easily give them the boundary conditions of their development as it is today, for example, that they could run those multiple scenarios before it gets run as a final piece, if that makes sense.
It does, and I liked what you said about version control, because if it's out there and somebody's using a model that only yesterday was updated, then suddenly everyone's out of sync and it doesn't serve anybody's purpose. So I appreciate that perspective. And sorry, I had a bunch of, and I won't give them to you now, but would you be the person where there's some numbering issues in the bylaw draft? There are some font issues. I know that sounds very picky. Would I send them to you?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you. Or Mr. Baird, thank you.
Thank you.
And the MMC documents, like developers, builders in the province of British Columbia are familiar with them. Like, this isn't a surprise to anyone that we are moving to MMCD. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say every municipality in the province uses it, but it's been widely adopted by like every single municipality that I've worked with in my entire career.
Okay.
Except one has used the MMCD. And
it maybe seems like a trivial question. Is it expensive, or is it a subscription based thing? Like how how do people sign on to have access to the latest, greatest MMCD documents?
Yeah, there's a fee to purchase the standard and design guidelines. I'm not sure of the number. I can look that up for you.
Yeah, when you have a moment, there's no panic. And there was one, I think on page 51 of the document about building railway crossings. Can anyone in the city or any developer actually do that? Or do we build them and then CPKC maintains them and sends us a bill? Like, how does that work? I know that that's what they do, but I'm just.
Going off a bit of memory here of what I think you're referencing, but the section speaks to if your development were to, say, build a road that needs to cross a rail, it needs to follow, various standards about building that and getting approvals through the rail and Transport Canada and all that sort of thing. And then the city would ultimately, take that on as their.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and from one of our last meetings, you'd have to have a CPKC employee watching you if you're working within 25 and pay for him to do that or her. Sorry, Mr. Bronowski.
I know your worship, the engineering public works team has just sourced out the cost for MMCD. Design guidelines, print edition are something like, I think it's $320 if I should reopen this message. And then, $160 for a print edition. And then up from there, if you want a server edition that's hosted by them versus by you, or a single desktop or a mobile license. But they're in the hundreds, depending on which product flavor you want.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Other questions? Councillor Ramadas, and then Councillor Audie Kelly, and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Your Worship. This might be a little bit of a dumb question. Between July of 2023 to today, it was all around development of the bylaw itself, was it? Was there any opportunity for any kind of interaction with developer community in that time period? Or we just said, July, done, we've taken all the inputs and we're going to develop this?
Thanks, Councillor Ramadas. So yeah, July 23rd, 2023, or 24th, 2023, we issued the final draft bylaw to the development community and on Let's Talk Fernie, requesting comments back by August 18th, I believe. So that was their last chance to provide input. And then from there, it was sort of a legal review before we're here today.
Further?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. So would you think that 2 months of time period between July and August was sufficient for everyone to provide their inputs? Like, were we comfortable with that timeline? I know you've said that you were, but I just wanted to clarify once again.
Yeah, at that time, the development community asked to review the bylaw one more time. And that was sort of the timeline that made sense at the time. There were no issues that were brought up by anyone, and we did receive feedback within that timeline. So I wouldn't expect that to have been a challenge for anybody.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Apologies, Mr. Baird. I just wanted to make sure I understood back to Councillor Hamilton's question about the version of the MMCD. Now, did I understand you to say that the 2022 version is enshrined? That was right. And then, okay, this might be really stupid, but MMCD is not a public body. They're a private organization. What happens if they just cease to exist and then don't put out any more guidelines anymore? Where does our bylaw go after that then?
First question was the 2022 design guidelines. Yes, there's a standard specification as well that is a 2019 specification that's also referenced in the bylaw. And then the second question, what happens if MMCD disappears? I would expect that those documents that we hold would stay as part of our bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. Mr. McConnell, you were putting up your hand?
Yeah, if I may, your worship, thank you. Specifically back to Councillor Hamilton's initial conversation around the reference in the schedule and the section D. And I think this, I'll answer Councillor Audia Kelly's comments as well. When we reviewed this, one of the main things around this bylaw and in incorporating the MMCDs was ensuring that we were creating enforceable regulation within our bylaw. And so when you take a look at the Schedule A and it references section 1.2C, it talks about the master municipal construction documents. They're adopted. So it's 2019, that's our bylaw. The section D, it also does say where this bylaw is in conflict, this bylaw takes precedence. We're not vacating our authority to another authority. We've taken that authority. Under the Master Municipal Construction Documents Design Guideline Manual, it says that manual is most current edition. However, again, where this bylaw is in conflict with that manual, that this bylaw takes precedence. So we're saying that's a guideline document. We're applying that, but only when it doesn't conflict with our bylaw. So they're not necessarily incongruous, but I am going to take that further under advisement and confirm that prior to adopting to make sure that's clear. With respect to the Councillor Audia Kelly's question, absolutely, the intent of this bylaw is to incorporate them as they exist right now. And so if that organization no longer exists and no longer updates, our bylaw is what it is right now today. So that is what we're using. And even if they stop existing, we have a solidified document by which we are applying.
It's a defensible regulatory approach to develop.
Exactly. That was our number one concern with respect to our advice from council.
Okay. Councillor Hamilton, did you have another question?
I did have another question, and I'm just trying to find the section in the bylaw that I referenced in my question. But my note is, what is a minor system design, and why are we reducing this to 5 years from 10 years? I'm not sure if that twigs anybody's memory. I should have taken a better
Mr.
note.
Baird?
These are the kind of questions I love. Thank you.
I can tell by your smile.
You're referring to the stormwater management design guidelines, a minor system versus a major system. So a minor system would be a smaller return period storm event that typically, and as it's written in this bylaw and our current bylaw, we would want to see handled within the piped infrastructure. Major system event would be like a much larger return period. In the bylaw presented before you today, a 1 in 100 year return event. And those we would accept flooding within the roadway. So like your roadway itself would be the conduit that would handle those storm flows. The piece that you're referring to within the proposed bylaw, 1 in 10 year is the minor system that is defined. I believe in bylaw 1727 that changes depending on if it is a residential development or say a commercial or industrial development, where current bylaw 1 in 10 year, current bylaw residential is a 1 in 5 years, what you are designing to. We're just standardizing that across all.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Baird. That was very thorough. With that, I think I'll call or ask Mr. McConnell to read the staff recommendation, and if there's more discussion points, there's an opportunity.
And Your Worship, you identified some typos and other corrections you would like us to attend to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if it'd be appropriate for us to take first reading and then allow us to make those amendments. If there is something that needs to be done more than a typo, we would want to ensure that we identify that and bring that back as a motion to amend.
Yeah, and
second
I'll be honest, Mr. Baird, I don't know if it's an artifact of a translation to a PDF versus a Word document. So I'm not sure they exist in the source material, but there's certainly a couple of spots where the numbering.
Yeah, so my recommendation, which is a bit different from what's in the staff report, is that we provide first reading we get that material, we identify whether or not other amendments are made. And either way, we would bring that back for second and third reading as soon as possible. And as is indicated in the bylaw, the effective date of this bylaw, regardless of adoption date, is September the 1st.
Okay.
So we do have some time to make those kinds of corrections.
I'm satisfied with that.
Thank you. With that, then, Your Worship, I would recommend that staff recommendation is that subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 2514/2024 be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Baird. You deported yourself admirably up there.
Thank you.
Hard act to follow. Comported, thank you. Thank you, grammar police, or word use police. I better use the right word. No. It was comport adjacent. Ms. Lyde, thank you. This brings us to an item of business 11.1, a report from Project Engineer Line. Welcome. I'm suitably chastised.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I'll try to be quicker. We'll see how we go. So I'm here tonight to talk about plans for temporary repair and ultimate replacement of the 2 utility lines crossing Coal Creek. It's actually been a while since this project came to council, so I thought I'd start with a little background before we got into that part. The city has a water and a sanitary main that cross Coal Creek near Pine Avenue Bridge. Both utilities have concrete protection or encasement that was suspected to be damaged, exposing the pipes themselves during the high flow events of Coal Creek late 2021, that November atmospheric river event. Portions of the exposed pipe near the middle of each crossing have triggered concerns for each pipeline's integrity and resilience during future high flow creek events. The water main is a 300 millimeter HDP pipe. It was installed in 1995 and first repaired in another high flow event in 1999. This water main provides service to the city high pressure zones of Kato Road neighborhood south of Coal Creek. There is only one water feed for those neighborhoods, and all the neighborhoods you can see are outlined in yellow on the water side of your slide. That is the only water feed to those neighborhoods. There is no loop. The sanitary main also appears to be HDP, 200 millimeters in diameter, and it was installed in 1996. The sanitary catchment is the neighborhood of Pine Grove, a small residential neighborhood of approximately 24 homes. And that catchment area is shown on your left there. Here's a shot of more of their current condition. On both lines, there is a section of pipe completely exposed without encasement. The water main concrete encasement is generally intact with the exception of a void roughly at the channel center. And you can see the water main from in that void. The sanitary sewer concrete encasement is worse off. It has a gap of approximately 0.6 meters long, roughly at the channel center again. And it is, the whole line is undermined as well downstream, which you can kind of see from that picture as there's a sort of waterfall effect happening. Staff have written emergency response plans if either of those mains become damaged in a high flow event, but they require significant staff oversight of, maintaining pumps or whatever. And it's not guaranteed that the emergency replacement would replace the service levels currently offered to those communities. That means for water, for example, we may not be able to provide the amount of water pressure currently given to Montaigne, just with the emergency response. So the original plan devised was to just repair the concrete encasements, return that existing original protection to what it was, and then start a plan for full replacement. The RFP for concrete repairs went out in the fall of 2023 and no bids were received. So staff contacted prospective contractors with a request for proposal, thinking that maybe the job was just too small for the contractors to want to provide a full proposal. Unfortunately, that was not so. Staff received 3 bids from the request for pricing, all within the $400,000 to $500,000 range. The cost to repair the concrete itself, very small, very minimal, but the biggest parts of the cost estimates was actually the isolation of the concrete repairs from the stream while it was curing and accesses into the creek for those contractors. Originally, staff had estimated the design and repair of these 2 lines would be around $70K, which is what we requested back in the 2023 budget. But that cost estimate was made by staff and not with any existing or current repair to base it on. It was just our thought of what it may cost. But the environmental aspect of the repair kind of caught us blindsided. So with those cost estimates in mind, staff then talked to all the contractors who provided a bid to see if they had any experience with alternative repair methods. And so staff did investigate those alternative repairs that were mentioned, which was concrete mats to cover the utilities instead of pouring concrete, or steel plates across the encasement gaps. Based on the uneven surface of our creek bed, concrete mats not recommended by the providers of concrete mats, but the steel plate suggestion had merit. As there wouldn't be as concrete poured, there's much less isolation and environmental monitoring required for that solution. Thus, the cost for construction was greatly reduced. So during the time that staff were investigating alternative repair options, we also actioned our consultant, ISL, to provide preliminary replacement options, as the cost for the repairs were coming in at replacement cost levels. So at this point, we asked ourselves, would it be more cost effective to just replace the lines instead of repairing them? On the water side of things, 2 options for replacement was provided. First, directional drilling to install a new water main deep under the creek bed. As it's bedrock in that area, a really robust drill was required. Secondly, hanging the main off the Pine Avenue Bridge. The pipe would be heat traced and insulated to ensure no freezing and protected from river issues that may occur. 3 options were given for the sewer main. First, a siphon, well, actually 2 siphons, because you want to have that backup necessary. So 2 deep drill under the creek bed. A pump station and a force main could direct waste north and keep it entirely out of the creek, which is nice. And it would direct into the First Avenue sewer. Or a pipe could also be hung from the bridge, operating via gravity and connecting to the future Montaigne sewer line. Based on capital costs, operational and maintenance needs, staff suggests putting aside the money in reserves for both utilities to be hung from the Pine Avenue Bridge for full replacement. Now, speaking of costs, the 2023 budget granted this project $69,000 for repair design, preliminary replacement design, and construction of that repair. As I said before, staff suggests that amount, but we really didn't have a good example project to use as comparison. And with the amount of redesign that we have done with the consultant for the repair options and the investigations we've done, the consultant budget is currently estimated about $45,000 to finish off the design and support construction. The steel plate repair is estimated at $88,000, and that brings our total budget up to $133,000, which is $64,000 more than we have in our budget. Staff believe that actioning this repair at this time is the best risk reduction strategy in order to build up a reserve over 5 years for full replacement of both lines. And speaking of that cost for replacement, to fund the repair of just over $800,000, we require putting away an additional about $140,000 per year, divided half into sewer and water reserves. This increase contributed to these reserves, all else remaining equal, would be about $20 extra per year to the average single-family household. So during this project, staff have attempted many ideas to balance the risk of service interruptions to these communities and the fiscal responsibility we hold dear. Staff have emphasized minimizing the risk of emergency breaks by determining a temporary repair option to continue to deliver dependable services to the community, and we will schedule the replacement in 5 years to limit the impact on budget. And thus the options are on the screen.
Thank you, Ms. Line. Questions from council? So just for clarity, HDPE pipe is high density polyurethane pipe. Polyethylene pipe. So it's effectively a plastic pipe in both cases exposed in the creek that a stray rock could hit at any moment during freshet, particularly.
That is so, but it is much more, it is less stiff than PVC, which is our typical when you think of a plastic pipe. It does have some movement to it.
More robust.
Yes, in that way, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we have survived through freshet 2022 and 2023 already, but this is a risk we are carrying.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. By the way, HDPE is what is used in the mine site most of the times.
I thought so.
Yeah. Just a minor question, Engineer Line. You did say in the report with respect to the land crossing agreement with CP there. Why did that come as a surprise? Like, why didn't we know that we did not have an agreement with them before this?
Councillor Ramadas, that is a very good question that I cannot answer, as I was just in this role a year and a half. And when we reviewed our crossing agreements, there was not one for that. So I don't know, it was installed, it's the sanitary crossing, it goes under the CP rail bridge. It was installed in 1996, which was a big flooding event for the Coal Creek. And actually the south side of that CP rail crossing disappeared in that flood as well. So there might have been a lot going on at that time. And maybe I'm doing a lot of maybes, but it's like, we will put this in and we'll figure it out later altogether, because CP Rail was also doing a lot of rehab at that time. However, I don't know for sure, but we do not have a crossing agreement with them for that line.
Yeah, and we just recently had a conversation about a culvert that drains into Coal Creek that is also on CP land that isn't documented, and we've now created an agreement around it. So, Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. To be clear, kudos to you guys to have gone ahead and cleared that up. I didn't mean to criticize here. Are there any other areas where this might be a problem in the city? Like, is this a one-off kind of a problem or issue?
As far as I know, this was an interesting area. I'm not aware, but again, some of these files that you investigate as they come up, we wouldn't have even looked at these utilities in Coal Creek, assuming they were properly managed when they were installed. So I cannot answer that for you right now.
Councillor Adia Kelly and then Councillor Nixon.
Thanks, Your Worship. Engineer Line, so this repair that we're proposing to do, we're hoping it holds up for 5 years. Are we pretty confident that it's going to be like sturdy? And second part of the question, the 815K, have we factored in sort of an inflationary number to that so that, we are going to be able to put away the right amount of money?
Thank you for the question. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Work backwards. So yes, the steel plates that are proposed will be sturdy enough, and we will obviously have a robust inspection program to make sure that all the bolts connecting the steel plates to the concrete are still there. And we are also thinking of adding like additional bolt holes. So if need be, we could do new bolts if something happens. And we could also replace that repair easily as well. And as for the interest rates, may I move this over to finance?
Thanks, Councillor Audia Kelly. For the purposes of this report, I did factor in current interest rates in terms of our contributions and how that will build up to 815 5 years from now. But I really just provided those numbers just for some context for council. We'll be like digging into those a bit more in the fall when we look at our water and sewer budget in time for next year's bylaw updates. And so for now, it was just for context, and those numbers just assume everything else remains equal in our water and sewer world, which is not always the case. So we'll be looking at it as a whole in the fall, and certainly will provide the best estimates we can at that time. Hope that helps.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. The steel robustness and repair was, that was my question as well. But I had another question. If money wasn't an issue here, what is the best timeline and the best thing to do for this right now? Sorry to put you on the spot. That was pretty mean.
That is not mean at all. So I would definitely, I really enjoy putting pipes along bridges, you know, personally. I think it's a great, like it's lower impact, there's less digging, and you can like monitor them, right? Inspection is easy. It is above ground. Yes. So I would still suggest putting the pipes across the bridges. However, in the case of sewer, there is no future sewer line to tie into yet. So that one we would have to go with one of the alternatives if we were just going full bore replacement. And in that case, I would suggest the lift station, even though it's more expensive, it takes it out of the river.
Understood. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. That actually partially answered my question. I was gonna, orthogonal to it, I was going to ask.
Oh.
Well.
You're back.
Oh, yeah. I got a little error message. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, in an earlier talk, we were speaking about another one of our pipes that runs under the river, and it was mentioned it was deep enough that the year-to-year fluctuations, you know, the river cuts, it adds, would never actually make it to that pipe. So I was wondering, is there not anything else we can do? Could it move up or down, or I guess to a bridge? I hadn't thought of that. Or are we just going to spend this money and then have the same issue again later?
So Coal Creek, let's do one utility at a time. Sanitary, obviously, we try to do things by gravity for low cost and low operation and maintenance. So there's very limited like places we could tie into the system downstream. And that's why lift station was proposed, pumping. If we wanted to stay on the north side of Coal Creek, we'd have to do a new crossing under the CP Rail Bridge. So that like was not a good alternative. Water mains, I really hadn't thought of that, you know, that way before. But because we have all the other infrastructure in place on the other side of the river, this is the shortest distance to reach the solitary feed to that side of the river. Thus, it is cheaper to do it at this location.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a fair amount of money for what might last some number of years, and it's obviously quite critical. I just was really wondering if there was a better option, but I do know about the constraints on pipes, so thank you very much.
Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. I think my questions have already been somewhat answered, but kind of two questions. One was to what Councillor Ramadas was asking about, not having this on record. Previously, like, has that triggered us to actually look and kind of do a bit of an audit of any other potential issues that might arise? Which I think was answered with a no, not really. And then the second one was what Mr. Burdett, I think, responded to with respect to, this is kind of a critical water sewer area. We all are well aware of the state of some of our other water and sewer areas, and curious what risk profile there is that we have another major repair in the next 2 to 5 years, kind of the similar timeline to these reserves.
I don't believe an answer is needed for question one. You kind of answered yourself, but question two, this is because it is a creek crossing and it is exposed right now, we do know of this issue and would like to action a repair and full replacement. It's like saying, what are our unknown unknowns, right? And that is unfortunately too big to fathom, but that is why we do have a reserve fund just in case, and building it up to support this repair specifically, but also generally repairs and replacement projects is the way to go.
Further?
Yes, thank you. I guess kind of the question is, if we start investing money now to fund this repair in 5 years' time, what is our potential exposure that in the interim we encounter another significant event that these reserves have to go to replace that?
Like Director Burdett said, there is a chance that something else will come up, and then we will react accordingly depending on the full risk that we are exposed to. And we can always look at how the steel plates are doing and push it off if possible, although that would not be my recommendation.
Which
Thank you.
echoes comments made earlier about fully funded reserves and the value of them when the unforeseen happens. Thank you, Ms. Line. Councilor McIsaac.
Thank you, Bishop. I'm 98.5% confident that the answer to my question will be, that's residential. But I couldn't help but notice during your question about the polyethylene that on page 167 in the bylaw 2514 about list of approved materials and products under water surface, it says no polyethylene. Now the bylaw is not enforced yet, so we could get away with it, but I just thought I'd mention it.
If I may.
Sorry.
Thank you, Council. I just wanted to jump in on fill in some of the spots regarding the crossings the city has. We have quite a few across the Elk, and then these across Coal Creek. They're inspected annually, if not more frequently. If the operators notice challenges with a certain siphon or whatever, they're inspected more often, but we can only inspect what we can see. And what happened with Coal Creek in the fall of 2021 was the whole creek bed was scoured so low, and then we had kind of dry conditions the following summer that we could see the creek bed, and the issue was noticed, I believe, upon one of these inspections. So we can only inspect what we can see, but we're out there doing annual inspections, and that's how this was exactly caught. So I just wanted to fill on that end. And then I wanted to touch on, our risks and where they are. And the best data we have right now is in the IICP. That lets us know where our risks are. However, that document was also limited with what it could inspect, and based on a desktop study and other factors, knowledge from the crew, et cetera, that's where that document came from. So that is the hub of what we know and where we think our risks are. So hopefully that answers your questions a little bit better.
That's helpful, Mr. Heiser. Thank you. Ms. Line.
And if I may add on the material selection for replacement, that isn't set in stone right now for this exact job. So it doesn't have to be HDP for the replacement.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Mr. McConnell to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that council approve a budget increase of $64,000 to the Coal Creek Crossings project to allow for 2024 repairs to the utility lines to be funded from reserves, and that staff be directed to amend the financial plan accordingly.
We have a mover, Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And before you go, Ms. Line, the archaic meaning of deport. So I'm dating myself a bit. And for you, I will say she has deported herself with great dignity. It does work.
I appreciate that, I suppose.
Thank you, Ms. Line. I didn't want to leave that there. Councillor McIsaac was looking a bit smug for my liking. Of course I did. Ouch. Fair comment.
With respect, Your Worship, the best jokes are all missed because councillors aren't turning on their microphones.
That is true. Yeah, and I'm grateful. I'm often grateful for that. So this brings us to item 12, a notice of motion from Councillor Nixon, and I'll ask Councillor Nixon to read this. The motion. There will be no discussion of the motion at this meeting.
Zero discussion. Thank you, Worship. Well, let me get my reading glasses here. This is my moment. Be it resolved that council directs staff to bring back a report that will consider the feasibility of water meters for the city of Fernie. This report should include, but not be limited to, our current water usage patterns, benefits, technological options, in brackets, smart meters, costs and financing options for the utility, potential regulatory requirements, and any other concerns as staff deem necessary to create a comprehensive report.
Thank you, Councillor. So just if I could turn to Mr. McConnell, just to remind folks how that works into the system.
Right, so it'll be much like the next item on the agenda, which will be that under other business next week, Councillor Nixon will be asked to move his motion. And if he gets a seconder, then the council can debate the motion itself.
Thank you. And thank you again, Councillor Nixon. So, and I apologize, Mr. McConnell, for the next one. It's a little unclear to me.
Okay, so right now, and I appreciate that. If you'd like, I'll just explain.
Yeah, please.
So the next one, there is a standing motion. It's been moved and seconded, but it was tabled. So we're asking that a motion to take it from the table be received. That motion needs to be moved, seconded, and there's no debate on it. It's just a question of calling the question to confirm it can be removed from the table.
Okay.
At that point, I would suggest that I would read out the motion in whole again, so that council is aware of what they're debating, but there's no need to move it and second the motion again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So for council, you'll have seen it on your agenda. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to take it from the table. Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Sorry, Your Worship, before we
There's no discussion.
Oh.
We just vote whether it comes off the table. Thank you. I'll call the vote again. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then I will ask our corporate officer. Oh, sorry, no.
Yeah, no, if you would,
reread the
I'll reread the motion that's
Thank
now
you.
on the table. So the council is aware and the public is aware that be it resolved that council directs staff to bring back a report on the impacts to operational budget and work plans when proceeding with the public-private partnership for installation of EV charging stations at the skate park and how to ensure that the opportunity is open to other potential interested parties.
Thank you. And Mr. Baranowski, do you have additional information?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I can, I've had a good discussion with an individual from the community association. And their recommendation is if we're looking to pursue opportunities like this and have them be fair and transparent as they come to us, we simply need to adopt a framework on what we will entertain and have that framework be available. So what are the criteria we would like to, we would require in order to entertain such an offer? Would it be that We require some form of profit sharing, a lease of no more than 10 years of duration. The location and maintenance of said location would be the responsibility of the operator or the leasee, rather than the city of Fernie and the taxpayers. And so establishing that sort of formal criteria and adopting it as a policy of council then provides us something where when someone comes in to present as a delegation or seek an opportunity, we can respond by saying, take this criteria away, come back if you match it, and then we can bring a recommendation to council to say, if you wish to proceed, this individual has met that criteria. That's similar to the disposition policy. It provides a fair and transparent mechanism and criteria to assess offers as they come from the market on items such as this. Specific to this item, general feedback from us is on the pitch, not having read the actual legal documents or contractual documents myself. The fact of the matter is the skate park is cleaned, but not regularly, as it is not a municipal facility that receives regular winter snow removal. By clean, I mean snow and ice removal during the winter months. So it's cleaned out of convenience as it's right next to a snow dump, but not regularly serviced. So it may not meet their service expectations, and there would be some, marginal cost increase for that. Staff wouldn't recommend a 20-year lease term. We would likely seek something shorter than that for council. And then beyond that, I would have to look at the actual contractual agreements and the opportunity to integrate solar based on this pitch itself. But it is with the criteria from some other municipalities that have worked with the Community Energy Association with initiatives such as this elsewhere in the province and the Kootenays, that we could move this forward, or based on that kind of a framework, issue a request for proposals, or simply issue this as criteria that we wanted to entertain if this is a criteria opportunity that council wants to just have sitting out in the marketplace without an open and closed date.
Thank you, Mr. Baranowski. Councillor Hamilton, sorry to cut you off there earlier, but did you have a comment?
I was simply going to ask what the procedure was.
Oh, okay. I stifled that pretty quick. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I really like the idea of having a criteria document available that this is the kind of thing that would save us a lot of time and energy in the future if we go through that exercise of developing a set of criteria. It sounds like what CEO Baranowski said is that other communities have gone through this exercise as well, and hopefully in concert with the CEA and them. That was a surprising tongue twister. We can make fairly short work of that, but that feels like great upfront work to be available to avail ourselves of opportunities like this that come up. So I'm certainly encourage us to go down that path.
I would agree. Other comments? Yeah, Councillor Hamilton, sorry.
I will just say, as the mover of this motion, that is certainly within the scope of what I was hoping to see as an outcome.
Fair. Mr. McConnell, what's our next step then? If we move this motion as read, is that sufficient to, for example, advance or seek a framework from another community for review, or because this speaks to staff coming back with a report on the work it will take effectively?
Correct. And council may recall that just before Councillor McIsaac moved to table the motion, there was a suggestion that the motion be amended to include the city of Fernie and not the skate park as to the actions. But if council is prepared to give me a couple minutes, I'd be happy to chat with Mr. Baranowski to see what we could do within the framework of this motion to have an amendment to it, because the way it's currently worded, it doesn't necessarily bring back what CEO Baranowski just described.
Agreed. Yeah.
And obviously this has been on the agenda a couple times, and we would like to probably have some direction in that regard, cleared up, as opposed to going back through the motion.
Yeah.
Like, defeating this and going back through the notice of motion process. If there's a way to amend this such that it identifies what has been addressed, I'd like to be given an opportunity to try and draft that.
How much time would you like? 5 minutes?
5 minutes would be great.
Okay. Ms. Rose, can we go for a 5-minute recess? And yeah, I think Councilor Hamilton's indicated that would be a friendly amendment because it achieves what he wanted at the end. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Mr. McConnell.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the conversation that's occurred and identifying the council's intent with respect to this particular motion, the wording we're recommending it be amended to, and I've thought I had put it in the chat, I just hadn't hit send. I'll read it out though. And I want to be clear. I'm seeking this as an amendment because within our process, it's better to do that than to defeat the notice of motion and have to bring it back through the process. And this is sufficiently within that same framework and council's intent. It's be it resolved that council direct staff to bring back a report on the impacts to operational budget and work plans in proceeding with creating a framework to enable the fair and transparent consideration of public-private partnership proposals for installation of EV charging stations within the city of Fernie.
So Councillor Hamilton moves the amendment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Audia Kelly. Any further discussion? All in favor?
So that's the amendment approved. Now that motion has to be voted on.
And you don't need to read it again?
No.
No. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was procedurally awkward, but a good outcome. And with that, we'll move on to reports from council members. Item 15. I'll start on my left with Councillor Ramadas.
In the hotspot. Not much to report, Your Worship, other than the fact that myself and my colleagues, yourself included, we were in the ready discussion with RDEK. That was a very that was really fruitful, and really appreciate all the community members who participated in the process. So yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. A couple things to report this time around. Firstly, just got back from AKBLG, had a great weekend of learning with colleagues from across the Kootenay boundary local government area. I'm also proud to report that I was re-elected to another term on the AKBLG executive. I do have a question that I've made a note of during one of the sessions that I attended at AKBLG, and that was whether or not, or what would be involved with getting a kind of a walkthrough or a presentation from staff on our emergency response triggers and kind of what the process is for the EOC for us as council, just to be aware of that. You know, we're coming into freshet season, experts are predicting a significant fire season again, and just so that we're all aware, you know, what that looks like, so we're a little bit more educated in talking to the public, and most importantly, who we need to be pointing people to in given situations, because they are the actual experts in those emergency responses.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll look to Mr. Baranowski, and do you need a resolution from council to create an opportunity for, perhaps it's our deputy chief or someone else to present to us before early June?
Deputy chief is the right individual as the emergency management program manager locally. He's the person who can walk you through what our freshet triggers are and when we activate locally versus when the RDEK activates in our roles. I'll share that information with the chief and himself, and he can likely find a time to offer a training session for you on your role. As we redevelop our emergency response plans and the capacity and role of our emergency management committee and emergency management planning committee, there's likely a liaison role that will have to be considered as we look at a policy branch versus the executive branch versus the different divisions within our EOC. But Scott Robinson, or deputy chief, the person to talk through all of that stuff with yourselves.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Nixon.
Are you sure you want me to go? Okay, yeah, it was a pretty busy couple weeks. I attended the Elk Valley Coexistence Coalition meeting at the Art Station. We had the room was pretty packed. It was put on by Y to Y, Yukon to Yellowstone. We had a good day. More in-depth look at all the collective efforts that have gone into place. There was a whole bunch of regional experts, and I thought it was a really good day. And we looked at the current status of conflicts and bear mortalities in the area and what some of the solutions for the future could be. And I feel really optimistic that some of the participants in that room will be working to get funding for themselves and doing an assessment of this area, which I was highly encourage them to do that, because then it takes it into their personal realm versus our staff as well. I also attended the Business Banter Beer at the FBC with the Fernie Brewing Company, which made me, I had some banter there with some people, and it made me almost late for the next thing, the Columbia Basin Trust resident directed grants, where we had over $175,000 worth of asks and only had $75,000 to give out. So we had some really hard decisions to make. There's some really good community people here in the Valley and working hard on their organization. Lastly, I attended the Association of Kootenay Boundary Local Government last weekend. Sad that our entire team was not there, but we represented well for the city of Fernie. We had 5 resolutions submitted, and 3 were endorsed by the membership of the AKBLG, which is quite flattering. We had the change in the MRDT, restructuring for infrastructure, stable money for municipalities, i.e. municipal sales tax, and enhanced transit support were all endorsed. My one resolution weighted voting for the RDEK was not passed, and I did get some sideways glances from some directors. But you know what? You got to have these conversations no matter what. So nobody was angry. So it's good. I'm looking forward to presenting these to the membership at UBCM this September. So that's really good. And congrats to Councillor Hamilton for being elected for a second term as director at large, as well as Councillor McIsaac, who didn't run, who was just acclaimed. But we'll see what happens next year. He's vice president. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Well, that was a hard act to follow. Not a ton for me to report, Your Worship. I wanted to just say to the Ghost Riders, we were really proud of them on how they did this season and super looking forward to next season. And also my last report to council, Fernie Youth keep proving me right. They're pretty amazing. So shout out to Caleb for his historical win as a Canadian man. Really excited about that. And I did go to the Business Banter and Beer, which was lovely. And I had some really interesting conversations with several people. And I'm really excited about some of the ideas that they have that I hope we soon see at the council table. And I'm really glad that everyone had a great AKBLG. I knew you ably represent us, Councillor Nixon. I wasn't the least bit worried, and congrats to Councillors Hamilton and McIsaac.
He comported himself with dignity. In fact, poor Councillor Nixon was at the microphone more than almost anyone else. But he did a great job. So yeah, the Ready Grants, as I said on that evening, and thanks for speaking to that, councillors, it is inspiring to see the number of people and the effort they invest in this community and the good that they do. And so that one, very difficult, as has been indicated, because there's a lot of asks and not a lot of money. But I hand it to council. It's a very, very healthy, robust conversation, and it's hard choices, but I think we worked very hard to be fair there, and so thank you for your input. I got to judge at the Fernie Academy Poetry Slam last week, and that is always a lot of fun. So impressed with how, to Councillor Audia Kelly's comments, how the youth in this community can really shine. AKBLG, I won't add a lot more except to thank once again Councillor Nixon for standing at the microphone for as long as you did. Well done, and to congratulate our two other councillors on their either reappointment or election to positions. So well done there. Very much looking forward to the Chamber of Commerce AGM this Friday morning. I know many of us are going. There is also a Salvation Army volunteer dinner this Friday. It's pretty much open to the community, and folks want to attend that. It recognizes all the people who volunteer with that organization. And we will, of course, at the city, mark the day of mourning on Friday afternoon. So thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
I was considering giving my report.
Sorry.
How do you feel about that?
That's what happens when I don't start in the same place every time.
And your worship, Councillor Shoesmith as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who do you want to do first?
We'll leave Councillor Shoesmith for last if he's okay with that.
Okay.
Councillor McIsaac.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. I too am gonna talk a little bit more about AKBLG, but did want to make a quick comment about the Ready Grants. And we had so many deserving groups, and there were some good comments from the CBT representative that were here about how impressed they were. And I would hope that groups take further opportunities to reach out to CBT and don't just stop at the Ready Grants, because that's just one potential option. Many of them are doing some fantastic work. I had some comments that I want to make about AKBLG. It's one of our better conferences because it's very local. It comprises of the east and west and Kootenay boundary, Kootenay area. The vast majority of the communities within that particular area share an awful lot with us. And as a consequence, when we sit down, get the opportunity to sit down and talk about, we share a lot of the similar problems. We have an opportunity to talk about those things and solutions that have been tried and solutions that have worked and have not worked and so on. And one of the things that we get to do at that I very much appreciate, because it happens so seldom, is we have an opportunity to really speak very candidly about what the challenges are in the office of dealing with those significant problems, and philosophize a little bit, because we have more time. And it's something that's, there aren't really opportunities at the council table to have those types of discussions, and especially not with a bunch of varied levels of experience and so on. So I find them invaluable. I wanted to briefly mention just a couple of things that happened at AKBLG. The mayor of Trail gave a little talk about the challenges of dealing with the extreme cold event, and what some of the lessons that they took away from that. Like, for example, they had lined up a church for an extreme warming shelter, and after having the whole thing set up and doing all the advertising and handouts and approaching all the people in the street, then discovered that the building was not insured for what they wanted to do with it, and then they had to move the whole entire process. And it was one of those lessons of, if only we could know these things in advance and have gone and investigated it instead of discovering at the time. And it was very challenging for them. That whole process for them was extremely challenging. She was quite emotional about it, and it was a great talk. There was some very good discussion about climate change responses, and my favorite quote line that I took away from there was that floods and fire may kill people, but droughts kill civilizations. And if everyone was talking water management, everybody, it is staggering the effect that it's having, and that's in the Kootenays. I can't even imagine what it's like in the Lower Mainland and so on right now. Some great discussion on pre-disaster prep for businesses and how that has played out. It was very good, and a really great discussion on communication. The communication discussion, I mean, there's always the perennial advice to council members is stay off social media and don't be engaging there. But so much of it was focused on best practices for public input periods, dealing with conspiracy theory, language-based stuff and so on. And I was a bit heartened to see that our public input process mirrored the recommended best practices fairly closely. Although I did note one change that they had, which I think we should consider for the future, which was supporting public input in our public input period, commentary on the previous council meeting. So rather than only on the items that are on the agenda coming up, and that would give people, like after tonight, we've had a bunch of discussion on something, they could come next week and say, hey, this is how I think this is going to affect me.
Yeah.
So anyway, something for us to consider when we're looking at council procedure bylaw later. And that was pretty much it. Other than that, I just wanted to say congratulations to Kyle. I actually wasn't up for election because we're on split terms every 2 years. So I'll be running for election next year while Kyle sits very comfortably in the back row. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Well, congratulations to my colleagues at AKBLG. Even if he wasn't up for re-election, he's still worthy of some acclaim anyway. And not a ton to report here, just heard some good stuff about the Youth Action Network, helping set things up for varying kids to be doing a bunch of interesting and good things. So that was nice to hear. And not a ton else. Everything is pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So looking around the room, Councillor Ramadas.
Just a very burning question here, Your Worship. What are you wearing for the Chamber of Commerce AGM? Like, what's the dress code?
Well, I do have to speak at the beginning, so I'll have a jacket and tie. Yeah, but I don't think that's the dress code necessarily. Well, thank you for that, Council. A long meeting, but a good meeting. Lots of information, lots of good discussion. So with that, we'll say good evening.